Avant de commencer aujourd'hui, je veux partager avec vous les plus récents développements de la situation en Afghanistan. Je continue d'être en contact étroit avec nos équipes, autant les ministres que les hauts fonctionnaires. D'abord, 92 personnes de plus qui nous ont demandé de l'aide ont été évacuées. Ces personnes sont arrivées au Canada hier soir, comme les centaines d'autres qui sont arrivées plus tôt. Les réfugiés vont commencer une nouvelle vie dans notre pays et on sait que les Canadiens vont être là pour les soutenir et les accueillir. Je peux aussi confirmer que tous les Gurkhas qui ont soutenu le Canada en Afghanistan ont aussi été évacués. Every step of the way, Canada will stand by the Afghan people. My friends, it's great to be here today, back home in BC, alongside our outstanding Liberal team from Vancouver. I have to say, it feels great to be back here. After all, this province has been home for me for so long in so many ways. Everyone knows I'm a son of Quebec, but I'm also a proud son and grandson of British Columbia. My grandfather, Jimmy Sinclair, represented the North Shore for many years in the House of Commons and was always incredibly proud to be a British Columbian and raised me that way. I got my start as a teacher here in the Lower Mainland at Pitt River Middle School in Port Coquitlam, and this is a place I keep coming back to, particularly with my kids, because I want them to know and love this place every bit as much as I do. So it's incredibly good to be home here, and I'm really looking forward to this day. And that's also why I'm really glad to be here to share our plan for moving forward for British Columbians and for everyone. I know this has been a really tough time for people across the province, not just because of COVID-19, but you've seen the record-breaking heat waves. We've seen communities like Lytton destroyed by wildfires. The air has all too often been orange, even here in the Lower Mainland. So now, more than ever, we have to have each other's backs. But of course, I don't need to tell you that, because when this pandemic struck, when the wildfires hit, British Columbians knew exactly what to do. To fight COVID-19, people stepped up and got vaccinated. And of course, if you haven't yet gotten vaccinated, please do. It's the way we get through this. It's the way we protect each other. And to fight wildfires, emergency crews stepped up to the plate as communities put together fundraisers. You all did your part. So we're going to keep doing ours. This fire season has been one of the worst on record. It's clear we need more people and more resources to fight these wildfires and keep communities safe. So that's exactly what we're ready to deliver. A re-elected Liberal government will invest $500 million ahead of the next fire season for the firefighters and equipment provinces need. To begin with, we'll train at least 1,000 more firefighters in communities across the country who'll be able to mobilize right away when a major burn starts. We know communities could have used more hands this year, so when next year comes around, this training means teams will be ready and complete. We'll also support Indigenous-led fire crews. They have the knowledge about how to best protect their land and are on the front lines fighting these blazes every summer. The other way we'll keep communities safe is by investing hundreds of millions of dollars more for provinces to buy firefighting equipment, from water bombers to helicopters to other critical rescue supplies. Canada already has the expertise to make these planes. Look no further than Viking Air right here in BC, where they have the know-how to build water bombers. Provinces shouldn't have to rely on renting from abroad. We will be there with whatever BC and British Columbians need to get through the season. On combat les feux de forêt, mais on ne s'arrête pas là. On va faire tout ce qu'on peut pour s'assurer que vos maisons soient le mieux protégées possible contre les feux et les inondations. On va mettre de nouveaux programmes sur pied pour y arriver. We will roll out an ambitious new plan so you can protect your home from extreme weather events. This includes an expanded home retrofit program that will help you afford everything from fire-resistant shingles to better waterproofing for your basement. Through the new Climate Adaptation Home Rating Program, you'll be able to access experts who can guide you through this retrofits process. And if you're worried not just about your home, but your insurance premiums too, we have a plan to work with industry on keeping those affordable as well. The challenges ahead of us are real. As Tim Krupa, our candidate in Kelowna Lake Country, was telling me, the wildfire smoke in the interior has been so thick that some people couldn't see past their driveway on some days. Well, when the interior of BC is burning up, when families are losing their homes to floods, farmers are losing their crops to droughts, we know we are facing a climate crisis and we have to take even more action. Oui, on a mis un prix sur la pollution partout au pays et on s'est battu pour le défendre. Oui, on s'est engagé à atteindre la carboneutralité d'ici 2050. Oui, on investit dans de bons emplois verts et payants et on investit dans des technologies canadiennes propres. Et oui, il faut en faire encore plus. C'est le moment de continuer notre lutte contre les changements climatiques avec encore plus de vraies actions. Le Parti conservateur n'est même pas capable d'admettre que les changements climatiques sont réels. Il pense toujours qu'il y a un choix à faire entre les bons emplois et un environnement propre. Mais nous, on le sait depuis longtemps que l'environnement et l'économie vont main dans la main et on agit depuis le début. Alors, faites-vous entendre. C'est le moment de vous exprimer et de dire l'action climatique, c'est important pour nous. Et c'est pour ça que ça prend un vrai gouvernement progressiste et ambitieux à Ottawa. Canadians know the choice isn't between the economy and the environment. The choice is between a government that gets it and will act on it, or parties that won't and can't. I'm asking you to stand with us and vote for real, ambitious leadership, for a clean, protected environment, for good jobs, for strong health care, for affordable homes. Whether you mail in your ballot or head to the polls in person, make sure you make your voice heard. Have your say, and together, let's move forward for everyone. Merci. Je suis maintenant heureux de prendre les questions des médias.
Prime Minister will be taking 20 minutes of questions today, starting with Catherine Lévesque from La Presse canadienne.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Je voulais vous faire réagir sur les résultats de l'élection en Nouvelle-Écosse hier. Je me demandais qu'est-ce que vous en pensez, quelle est votre réaction? Est-ce que ça vous fait regretter d'avoir déclenché une élection fédérale?
J'ai eu l'occasion de parler au premier ministre élu, Tim Justin, ce matin, pour le féliciter pour sa campagne, mais aussi pour lui dire que j'ai très hâte de travailler avec lui sur les priorités qu'il a mis de l'avant, que ce soit un système de santé plus fort ou de continuer le travail sur les garderies de qualité abordables pour les familles à travers le pays, y compris en Nouvelle-Écosse. Parce que les choix que les Canadiens font maintenant sont extrêmement importants pour les mois à venir, mais aussi pour les années à venir. On est dans un moment de pivot pour notre nation, pour notre monde, que ce soit les changements climatiques, que ce soit d'en finir avec la pandémie. C'est un moment où les Canadiens doivent choisir et je sais que les Canadiens veulent continuer avec encore plus d'ambition pour lutter contre la COVID-19 et pour protéger nos familles, mais aussi pour aller de l'avant sur les changements climatiques, d'aller de l'avant sur le logement, d'aller de l'avant pour continuer de créer une économie prospère pour tous et c'est ce dont on va continuer de parler.
En suivi?
Très bien. Je voulais revenir sur l'annonce d'aujourd'hui. Vous l'avez mentionné, la situation est toujours difficile en ce moment avec les feux de forêt. Pourquoi annoncer cette promesse, la formation de 1000 pompiers à la fin de l'été, alors que la saison des incendies est presque terminée. Et qu'est-ce que vous répondez à Aaron O'Toole qui vous demande l'intervention des Forces armées canadiennes dès maintenant?
Ben, d'abord, je suis très content que Aaron O'Toole finisse par reconnaître qu'il y a des défis ici en Colombie-Britannique, parce que ça fait des semaines et des semaines, sinon des mois, qu'on travaille avec le gouvernement de la Colombie-Britannique pour appuyer leurs efforts. Ça fait depuis bien des semaines qu'on a mis sur pied des effectifs des Forces armées canadiennes pour être là pour la Colombie-Britannique. On va toujours être là en tant que partenaire et on va continuer de le faire. Mais même pendant qu'on fait tout ce qu'on peut avec la province, avec les communautés autochtones pour garder les gens en sécurité maintenant, nous savons aussi qu'il faut préparer pour les années à venir, parce que malgré ce que pense Aaron O'Toole, les changements climatiques sont réels et vont de pire en pire, et donc nous devons prendre encore plus d'actions pour protéger les gens ici en Colombie-Britannique et à travers le pays. C'est pour ça que nous annonçons encore plus de mesures où le fédéral va continuer à être là pour les gens ici et à travers le pays.
Prochaine question.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. Joyce Napier, CTV. Countries like the United States have already deployed major support to Haiti after Saturday's earthquake, and despite Canada's long-standing relationship with Haiti and the fact that there's a big Haitian community in Canada, you haven't yet. Global Affairs says it's still assessing the situation. What are you waiting for?
We're working very closely with officials on the ground, with our partners in the Haitian diaspora and also in the Haitian government to respond to their needs. From the moment that this terrible earthquake hit in Haiti, we were all reminded of the horrific scenes from 10 years ago, and we know that the Haitian people can count on Canada to be there. We will continue to be there. We will continue to help. We will be there to support as they get through this latest catastrophe and continue to create better prosperity for them all. Nous reconnaissons à quel point ça a été épouvantable de voir encore un tremblement de terre en Haïti. Nous sommes de tout cœur avec le peuple haïtien. Nous allons être là pour protéger la perle des Antilles. Nous sommes en travail rapproché avec le gouvernement haïtien, avec nos partenaires sur le terrain, mais aussi dans la diaspora ici au Canada, pour s'assurer qu'on est là pour appuyer de toutes les façons qui seront nécessaires.
En suivi.
Major General Danny Fortin says that he was removed for political reasons, that there was some political intervention in his case. How do you respond to that?
I'm not going to make any comments on that because obviously it is an ongoing court situation. But I will repeat how incredibly important it is that everyone who serves in the Canadian Armed Forces has an environment that is safe and supportive. We need to make sure that anyone who comes forward with allegations, with concerns, is receiving the proper support, the proper resources, but at the same time that we work to transform the culture of our Canadian Armed Forces so it is more worthy of all the extraordinary women and men who continue to step up to serve in Canada, to fight forest fires here in BC, to help people around the world in Afghanistan and in so many other ways. Our Canadian forces deserve the best kind of support, and that is the transformation that our Minister of Defense and our entire team has been working on so hard for so many years. Je ne vais pas commenter sur le cas particulier parce qu'on le sait que c'est devant la Cour, mais je vais rappeler ma position là-dessus, que c'est que chaque femme et homme qui choisit de servir dans nos forces armées mérite d'avoir toutes les ressources et tout l'appui nécessaire si ils vivent des choses inacceptables à l'intérieur des forces armées. Nous savons qu'on doit transformer nos forces armées pour qu'ils soient à la hauteur de la qualité et de l'engagement des femmes et des hommes qui choisissent d'y servir. On voit que nos forces font une job extraordinaire, que ce soit ici en Colombie-Britannique contre les feux de forêt, que ce soit en Afghanistan, que ce soit partout à travers le pays, le monde. Ils méritent d'avoir une culture et un environnement qui les protège et qui les appuie. Et c'est ce sur quoi nous travaillons depuis bien des années et nous allons continuer d'y travailler.
Thank you. Next question.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. Ashley Burke, CBC News. I understand you can't comment on the specifics of Major General Danny Fortin's case, but just broadly, when it comes to cases like his and others, Do you feel that yourself and your ministers are appropriately handling these cases? And as well, how do you defend your record on harassment when the military right now is in chaos?
Well, we have seen over the past number of months the extent to which the Canadian Armed Forces has not been to the level it needs to be to protect all women and men who choose to serve. We've seen a culture that has not been what people deserve when they choose to serve in the military. From the very beginning, we brought forward a number of different measures over the past number of years to improve the culture in the military, to make sure that all workplaces and public servants, including the military, have better recourses and resources when they choose to come forward with unacceptable actions. But we know there's more to do, which is why we appointed Lieutenant General Carignan to lead within the forces on this issue, and why we asked Louise Arbour to look into how we can create lasting, transformative change that's going to make a difference for the women and men in the armed forces, and ensure that our Canadian armed forces are strong enough and properly equipped to welcome in Canadians who want to serve and support them in the incredibly important work they're going to be doing throughout their career. Nous avons reconnu depuis le début qu'il fallait transformer nos forces armées. On a pris des mesures concrètes depuis plusieurs années, mais évidemment, il reste énormément de plus à faire, comme on le voit. C'est pour ça qu'on est très content d'avoir la lieutenant générale Carignan en train de mener la bataille à l'intérieur des forces pour mieux appuyer quiconque s'avance avec des préoccupations et des incidents inacceptables. En même temps, nous avons demandé à la juge Louise Arbour de nous dresser une piste, un parcours à suivre pour changer de façon fondamentale et d'améliorer la culture à l'intérieur des forces armées pour qu'on puisse avoir des forces qui sont à la hauteur de la qualité des gens qui choisissent de servir leur pays en s'impliquant.
Following up.
And a question for Minister Sajjan. You're going to have two generals who are in criminal court during this election campaign. How do you defend your record on this file to your constituents?
Excuse me, one second. No, as the Prime Minister has stated, we've been focused on day one to making sure that we have transferable change within the Canadian Armed Forces. And it takes time. And any time that somebody comes forward, we want to make sure that all the survivors are supported, and that's exactly what we've been doing. As we learn more information and we need to learn from those various lessons, we will make the various changes that are necessary. And as the Prime Minister stated, this is one of the reasons why we made the changes, why General Carignan is leading an organization that will bring that change. Louise Arbour, who's going to be working on that longer-term transformational change that's actually needed. From lived experience from myself, I know it takes time, but we have to remain strong and committed to this, to making sure that the Canadian Armed Forces, when they step forward, they get the support that they need, because we want to make sure that the Canadian Armed Forces is inclusive of all, making sure that we have more women in the Canadian Armed Forces, greater diversity, because this is what's going to make us stronger. And we have seen this impact overseas, and to use that diversity and gender equity, that has an impact on operational deployments.
Next question.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau, Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. Je veux revenir sur le résultat de l'élection hier en Nouvelle-Écosse, défaite surprise des libéraux en Nouvelle-Écosse. Quel avertissement retenez-vous pour votre campagne?
Dans quelque élection que ce soit, c'est important d'être à l'écoute des citoyens, d'être là pour leur proposer une vision forte de l'avenir, et c'est exactement ce que nous sommes en train de faire dans cette élection. On voit un choix clair auquel les Canadiens font face, entre un parti qui va continuer de mener la charge contre les changements climatiques, va continuer de s'ancrer dans la science pour lutter contre la COVID-19 et s'assurer qu'on prenne toutes les mesures nécessaires pour protéger tout le monde, un gouvernement qui va investir dans un système de petite enfance et de garderie, qui va créer des opportunités de logement abordable pour les familles. C'est les enjeux qui préoccupent les Canadiens et c'est exactement de ça qu'on est en train de parler, et c'est le choix que les Canadiens auront à faire pour les années à venir dans ce moment extrêmement important dans la vie de notre pays.
Je veux revenir sur la question de la vaccination obligatoire. Vous êtes dans une campagne fédérale. Vous avez amené de l'avant cet enjeu de la vaccination obligatoire, mais vous arrivez avec un plan incomplet pour les Canadiens. Vous n'êtes pas capable de dire quelles seront les conséquences auxquelles vont faire face les fonctionnaires récalcitrants. Alors, je veux vous poser la question aujourd'hui. Quelles seront ces conséquences pour les fonctionnaires récalcitrants qui ne veulent pas se faire vacciner?
Comme vous savez, ça fait plusieurs semaines qu'on travaille sur cette initiative parce que je pense que c'est important, oui, pour les fonctionnaires fédéraux, mais aussi pour quiconque au Canada qui veuille embarquer dans un train ou dans un avion qui soit pleinement vacciné. Je pense que c'est une question de protéger les Canadiens. Nous savons tous à 70%, à 80% que l'affaire la plus importante à faire, c'est de se faire vacciner pour se protéger soi-même, mais pour protéger les autres, pour protéger les enfants qui ne peuvent pas encore se faire vacciner. C'est pour ça que nous avons pris la décision que quiconque veut embarquer dans un train ou dans un avion va devoir être vacciné.
Next question.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Marika Walsh with the Globe and Mail. Following on your response to Louis' question, can you please be specific? You're championing this plan, but we don't actually hear from you how it's going to work. So moving away from the Federal Civil Service and looking at travelers in planes, trains, cruises, what happens to those travelers who refuse to be vaccinated and do not have a medical exception? Will they be allowed an accommodation or can they not travel?
Canadians know that the way to get through this pandemic is for everyone to get vaccinated. So unless people have a medical exception, they will not be able to board a plane or a train in Canada if they are unvaccinated. That is about protecting our young people. It's about protecting Canadians. We are absolutely unequivocal on that because this is how we get through this pandemic.
Following up.
Thank you. Turning now to Afghanistan, hundreds of Afghanis who helped Canada are finding it almost impossible to get on the list for flights to Canada. We're hearing from people who are being asked for documents that they don't have. They're being met by silence from federal officials. Immigration won't share lists of the people who qualify to leave the country with the veterans groups who are trying to help them leave. And time is running out. So what are you doing about this situation right now? And on Monday, you said that a flight from Canada would land once the airport is secure. Why hasn't that happened yet?
As I said, we just recently received 92, last night, 92 new refugees from Afghanistan who are right now being processed and settled in Canada. But there is much more to do. But let me be absolutely clear. The limiting factor on this is not paperwork or not connections with the Canadian government. The limiting factor on getting people out of Afghanistan right now is people being unable to get to the airport, people being unable to actually leave the country. And that is why, as a global community, we are all pushing so hard on the Taliban to ensure free access for Afghans to the airport. We need to be able to get people fleeing for their lives to safety, and that's why we are engaged on the ground in the airport. We have ability to process people. We just need people to be able to get to the airport, and right now the Taliban are preventing them from doing so, which is why we've seen a number of the planes airlifting people out have not been full. Because the Taliban is preventing people from getting to the airport. We're going to continue to push very hard alongside our international partners to get as many people out of Afghanistan as possible in short order. And on top of that, Canada has committed that we will be resettling over 20,000 refugees from Afghanistan in Canada because we know how important it is to do our part to support the people who fought for a better future for themselves in Afghanistan. Many of those people will have to come through third countries, will have to be able to get out of Afghanistan in the coming weeks and months, but we will continue to be there for them. And again, paperwork and formulas are not the impediment to getting people here.
Je
pense que c'est important de savoir que la documentation est importante. Il faut vérifier l'identité des gens, mais ce n'est pas les formulaires ou la paperasse qui bloquent les gens de quitter l'Afghanistan maintenant, c'est les talibans. Les talibans sont en train d'empêcher les gens de se rendre à l'aéroport où il y a des avions occidentaux qui sont là pour sortir les gens, sortir leurs citoyens, sortir leurs interprètes, comme le Canada est en train de faire. Mais les gens ne se rendent pas à l'aéroport, ne peuvent pas se rendre à l'aéroport. C'est pour ça que la communauté internationale est en train de travailler si fermement avec les talibans pour les pousser de permettre un libre accès à leurs citoyens à l'aéroport s'ils le veulent.
Prochaine question.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Mercedes Stevenson, Global News. With respect to Afghanistan, you say that the documentation is not the issue or lack of information. I have dozens of messages on my phone I'd be happy to show to your staff from Canadian interpreters saying that they are getting no communication from the Canadian Embassy. They don't know when to go, where to go, what to do. Other countries are at least tweeting this information out. They're calling. They're saying now the Taliban is starting to go door to door at the safe houses they're at and executing people. They're terrified. They want to be able to come here. And you're promising 20,000 places. On that number, you've said that you will accept that many refugees, but the UK's Home Minister is saying that in a conversation with the Five Eyes last night, Canadian officials told her that number is aspirational. Can you clarify where that 20,000 number came from? How many of those are new places, other than the 45,000 you'd already created for people from all over the world, and how many new places will you create?
The number is actually 21,000 if we're being specific about our goal, because there are 6,000 special immigration measures individuals who have direct connections to Canada, and 15,000 more human rights activists, journalists, people who could be interested that we will have a category for. But we recognize that this is something that is hard to quantify exactly because there are so many barriers on the ground right now that the Taliban are putting into this situation. As you point out, the situation is fluid, it's extremely difficult, and there is a very real concern that identifying people, putting out lists, sending very specific tweets on certain factors could actually endanger people on the ground because the Taliban, of course, are using all the different ways they can to track down people who they see as problematic or as opponents or adversaries within the country. We have to be continuing to be extremely thoughtful and careful in how we support people, because our goal is to get as many people to safety in Canada as possible, and that is what we continue to work with our allies on in this. Canada was able to resettle close to 40,000 Syrian refugees in the first months after the election in 2015. That is very much what we are focused on as a government and as a party, once again, getting as many people out of Afghanistan to safety in Canada, where I know this country is filled with families and communities and organizations who would love nothing more than to welcome Afghan families fleeing for their lives, wanting to build a better future for themselves and their kids. La réalité, c'est que nous parlons de 20 000. Nous espérons en faire encore plus, parce qu'on parle de 6 000 personnes qu'on identifiait comme ayant des liens direct ou indirect au Canada, et un autre 15 000 individus qui auraient un background qui mériterait d'être protégé, que ce soit des journalistes, que ce soit des activistes, que ce soit des gens qui ont œuvré pour un meilleur Afghanistan, qui sont maintenant vulnérables avec les talibans qui ont pris le contrôle du pays. Nous allons continuer de faire tout ce qu'on peut pour ramener les gens ici le plus vite possible, mais nous reconnaissons que la situation est extrêmement difficile, et c'est pour ça que nous travaillons avec nos alliés dans la région et à travers le monde pour offrir le plus d'aide possible à tous ceux qui veulent venir au Canada.
Global News en suivi.
On military sexual misconduct, with General Fortin in court this morning and General Vance also facing a charge of obstruction of justice, I have heard repeatedly from the victims of military sexual misconduct that they're dissatisfied with the government's handling of allowing the military police and military prosecutors to make decisions about how these cases are handled. The case of Hayden Edmondson, as well as the case of Art McDonald, not handed to civilian authorities, despite the fact in Admiral McDonald's case, you had the military police investigating the head of the military, which many police forces, as Minister Sajjan would say, would consider that to be a conflict of interest. You also have the Fish report from Justice Fish saying that these cases should be handed over, but the military is telling me it's actually military prosecutors and military police who will make the decision on which files get handed over. Why aren't you enforcing the findings and the recommendations you accepted of the Fish report to bring in civilian authorities to investigate these cases?
Mercedes, as you have been doing for many, many months for Canadians and for everyone, you've highlighted exactly the number and the levels of barriers that exist in transforming the culture of the military for the better. The processes that are in place to support survivors are inadequate, have been for a very, very long time. The culture around senior leadership in the military has long been resistant to being properly proactive and leading the way on a culture change that we know is necessary. And that's why, for all the work that we've done over the past years, we know there is much more to do. Every woman and man who chooses to serve in the Canadian Armed Forces deserves to be properly supported and deserves a safe working environment. That has simply not been the case for far too long, which is why we continue to bring forward even more measures to make sure that anyone who serves is properly protected and supported, including with General Carignan's work, with the work that Madame Justice Louise Arbour is going forward on, and all the work that Minister Sajjan continues to do.
Next question.
Mia Rabson from the Canadian Press. The government has decided not to pursue the court case preventing documents on the Winnipeg lab scientists to be released. Some, including the Conservatives, are suggesting this is just more attempts to hide the truth. Why not see the case through and let the courts decide whether parliamentary privilege should take precedence?
This was a decision made by the Department of Justice officials.
Following up.
And also, I know you answered this in French, but I'm just hoping you can get you on the Nova Scotia election in English, what your reaction is to it, and if it says anything to you about your own campaign.
I think I was pleased to be able to congratulate Premier-designate Houston this morning and talk about the work that I look forward to doing with him on childcare, on healthcare, on so many issues that matter to Nova Scotians and indeed to all Canadians. I think what we saw is that election campaigns are an important moment for citizens to choose what direction they want their country, their communities to take. That's why here at in this federal election, the choices are so incredibly important for Canadians. Do we get to see the Conservatives take Canada back, or do we move forward for everyone? Do we invest in childcare spaces that are quality and affordable right across the country? Conservatives won't do that. They'll actually reverse those changes. Conservatives actually want to make assault weapons legal again after over a year ago we made it impossible to buy, sell, or give or use assault weapons in this country. They want to reduce our ambitions on the fight against climate change when we know as much as we have done, we have to do even more to fight climate change. And on the pandemic, we've been unequivocal. We need to move forward and get people vaccinated and get through this pandemic by being there for each other as we have from the very beginning. And that's what we're going to continue to do. But that choice really matters. And what we saw in Nova Scotia really highlights that.
Next question.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Theo Argytis, Bloomberg News. Mr. O'Toole this morning made an issue of the inflation numbers that came in at 3.7%, which is one of the highest in the past 20 years. He called it a cost of living crisis. Wondering if you'd like to respond or have any comment on the numbers themselves, or whether you can tell us what you could do about it.
Well, first of all, we fully respect the Bank of Canada's role in setting monetary policy, so we won't comment directly on that. But I will say that in terms of cost of living, I don't think Aaron O'Toole can be considered serious when he's turning his back on getting women into the workforce by investing in proper childcare. We've signed historic agreements, including right here in BC, to ensure that Canadians see their childcare costs cut in half over the next year, down to $10 a day within 5 years. That's going to make a huge difference, not just in the lives of families, but in the well-being of our businesses and our economy. And the fact that Erin O'Toole doesn't get that is yet another example of the fact that the Conservatives are stuck in a Harper version of solutions to problems that simply don't work. Canada has moved forward since then. We know that having people's backs through this pandemic, as opposed to cutting services for people like the Conservatives tried to get us to do, was not just the best way to support people through this challenge, but also to ensure that we came back quicker and stronger than ever before. So again, the choice that Canadians get to make in this election are very, very clear. Do Conservatives take Canada back, or do we move forward for everyone?
Following up?
You mentioned the Bank of Canada's mandate. That mandate is actually expiring at the end of this year. If re-elected, it's probably the review or the extension of the mandate is probably the first big economic policy decision you'd make after the election. There's some talk of allowing the Bank of Canada to make some tweaks to the mandate to give it a little bit more flexibility to tolerate higher inflation, so it could, help stimulate the economy a little bit more in this very difficult time. Do you have a position on the mandate? Would you support a slightly higher tolerance for inflation?
I don't know. When I think about the biggest, most important economic policy this government, if re-elected, would move forward, you'll forgive me if I don't think about monetary policy. You'll understand that I think about families. When we first got elected in 2015, the very first thing we did was raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% so we could lower them for the middle class. And similarly, a re-elected Liberal government will continue to invest in supports for families, for students, for seniors, investing in housing, because we know it is not right that so many people right here in the Lower Mainland and indeed across the country can't afford their first home. We know these are the policies that make a difference in the growth of our country and the jobs people get and the opportunities people have to grow and prosper. That is what we will stay focused on.
You will take one last question.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. This is Parmeet from Red FM Vancouver. My question is regarding the increasing gang violence activity in Lower Mainland area. As a concerned citizen, I am very concerned about this issue. Actually, people are not feeling safe in their home anymore, maybe in the parks or the street as well. My question is what your government is planning to eradicate this situation or to control this situation.
Thank you very much for the question. It's always good to see Red FM out and asking tough questions. You can't visit Surrey, you can't be anywhere in the Lower Mainland or indeed across the country without hearing people concerned about community safety. And that is why we are committed to continuing to strengthen gun control when the Conservatives are committed to weakening gun control. And it's right there on page 90 of the Conservative platform that they will repeal the measures that made assault weapons illegal to own, to use, to buy in this country. It's inconceivable that at a time where Canadians are concerned about gun violence, Erin O'Toole is pandering to the gun lobby and is going to make assault weapons legal again. On top of our ban on assault weapons, we're moving forward giving communities and cities the power to ban handguns. We're continuing to strengthen our measures at the borders to interdict the importation of illegal guns and greater consequences and background checks to ensure that guns don't end up in the hands of criminals. But at the same time, we've been there to invest in community support programs, in community safety programs, in young people in communities, and being there to act concretely to make our communities safer, because that's what Canadians want. They want safer communities, not more rights for gun owners to buy AR-15s and the like.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Trudeau. C'est ce qui met fin à la conférence de presse aujourd'hui.